The night air hung cold over Tbilisi, thick with the breath of conspiracy. In the royal palace, candles flickered in their sconces, casting trembling shadows across stone walls that had witnessed centuries of Georgian glory. King Demetrius II lay sleeping in his chamber, unaware that his final hours had arrived not on a battlefield where he had fought so fiercely, but in the sanctuary of his own bed. The silk sheets that should have cradled a monarch's rest would instead become his shroud. Demetrius II had ruled Georgia with an iron will, a warrior king who refused to bow before the Mongol overlords who demanded submission from every throne in the Caucasus. He had spent his reign dancing on the edge of a knife, playing the deadly game of medieval politics where one wrong move meant annihilation. The Mongol Ilkhanate watched Georgia with hungry eyes, and Demetrius had committed the ultimate sin in their eyes. He had dared to resist, to rebel, to dream of a Georgia free from the yoke of foreign masters. His defiance had made him a hero to his people, but it had also signed his death warrant in blood. The conspirators moved through the palace corridors like shadows given human form. These were not foreign assassins but Georgian nobles, men who had once knelt before Demetrius and sworn oaths of loyalty. Now they came with murder in their hearts, convinced that their king's stubbornness would doom them all. The Mongols had made their demands clear: deliver Demetrius or watch Georgia burn. These nobles had chosen survival over honor, collaboration over courage. Their footsteps were silent on the cold stone floors as they approached the royal chamber, each man carrying the weight of what they were about to do. The door to the king's bedchamber opened without a sound. Demetrius lay in his bed, his face peaceful in sleep, untroubled by dreams of betrayal. The years of constant warfare had carved lines into his features, but in rest he looked almost young again, like the prince he had been before the crown became a crown of thorns. His sword hung on the wall beside the bed, close enough to reach in an emergency. But tonight, there would be no time for heroic last stands. Tonight, betrayal wore the faces of trusted men. They surrounded the bed in a silent circle, nobles whose names had once been spoken with respect in the halls of Georgian power. Their hands trembled as they reached for the king, not from fear of failure, but from the magnitude of the sin they were committing. In Georgia, the king was more than a ruler, he was anointed by God, a sacred vessel of divine authority. To lay hands on him was to tear the fabric of cosmic order itself. But the Mongols had offered them a choice between damnation and destruction, and they had chosen what they believed was the lesser evil. The attack came with brutal efficiency. Strong hands clamped down on Demetrius's arms and legs, pinning him to the bed before consciousness could fully return. His eyes flew open in the darkness, confusion giving way to horror as he recognized the faces of his own nobles looming above him. He tried to cry out, but a hand pressed hard against his mouth, silencing any hope of summoning guards who might still be loyal. The king thrashed against his captors, his warrior's strength formidable even in surprise. But there were too many hands holding him down, too many men who had sold their souls for the promise of Mongol mercy. Then came the cord, thick, rough hemp that bit into the flesh of his throat. One of the conspirators, his face twisted with anguish and determination, wrapped the rope around the king's neck and pulled. Demetrius's body convulsed as his airway closed, his legs kicking beneath the silk sheets, his fingers clawing desperately at the hands that held him. His eyes bulged with terror and betrayal, meeting the gaze of men he had trusted, men he had elevated, men who now murdered him in the name of political expediency. The candles continued to flicker peacefully, indifferent witnesses to regicide. The struggle lasted longer than the conspirators had anticipated. Demetrius was a warrior, his body hardened by years of combat, and even in the face of death he fought with every fiber of his being. His face darkened from red to purple, veins standing out like cords beneath his skin. Saliva frothed at the corners of his mouth as his body's desperate need for air became agony. The nobles held firm, some closing their eyes against the sight, others watching with grim determination, all of them knowing they had crossed a line from which there could be no return. The king's resistance gradually weakened, his movements becoming sporadic twitches, his strength draining away like water through cupped hands. When it was finally over, when King Demetrius II of Georgia lay still and lifeless on his own royal bed, the conspirators released their grip and stepped back. The silence in the chamber was absolute, broken only by their own ragged breathing and the soft crackle of candle flames. They stared at what they had done at the body of their king, his face frozen in an expression of betrayal and suffering, the cord still embedded in the bruised flesh of his neck. Some wept, others stood in shocked numbness. All of them knew that this night would haunt them until their own deaths came calling. They carried the body through the pre-dawn darkness to where Mongol officials waited, delivering their murdered king like merchants presenting goods for inspection. The Mongols received Demetrius's corpse with cold satisfaction, another rebellious ruler silenced, another example made for any who might dare to resist their dominion. The Georgian nobles received their reward. Georgia would not be put to the torch. Their own lands and titles would remain secure, and they could return to their estates as men who had saved their country. But salvation purchased with a king's blood carries its own curse, and history would remember them not as saviors, but as traitors who strangled honor itself in the dark. In the days that followed, the news spread through Georgia like poison in the bloodstream. The people who had loved Demetrius for his defiance wept openly in the streets. The churches held services for a king who had died not in glorious battle but in ignoble murder, strangled by his own nobles in his own bed. The throne passed to another, more compliant ruler, one who would bend the knee to Mongol authority without resistance. Georgia's brief flicker of independence was extinguished, and the nation would remain under the shadow of foreign domination for generations to come. The conspirators lived on, wealthy and powerful, but their names would be spoken as curses by Georgian patriots for centuries after. The chamber where Demetrius died was never used as royal quarters again. Servants whispered that on certain nights, you could hear the sounds of a struggle in the darkness, the desperate gasps of a man fighting for breath that would never come. The palace stood as a monument to the brutal pragmatism of medieval politics, where loyalty was a commodity to be bought and sold, and even kings could be murdered in their sleep when they became inconvenient. The silk sheets were burned, but the stain on Georgia's nobility could never be washed away. History offers no easy answers about the murder of Demetrius II. Were the conspirators pragmatic patriots who saved their nation from Mongol wrath, or were they cowardly traitors who murdered honor for the sake of survival? The question has echoed through the centuries, as relevant now as it was on that dark night in medieval Tbilisi. Power demands terrible choices, and sometimes the line between salvation and sin is drawn in blood on silk sheets. What remains undeniable is the image of a king who dared to defy an empire, betrayed not by enemies on the battlefield, but by the men who slept under the same roof, who ate at the same table, who swore oaths they would later strangle with their own hands. If this story made you think, don't look away. Like, share, and subscribe for more dark truths buried beneath history's blood-stained pages, because the past isn't dead, it's still warning us. The choices we make in the shadows echo through eternity, and every crown rests uneasily on a head that others might wish to remove. In the halls of power, trust is the most dangerous luxury, and even sleep offers no sanctuary from the ambitions and fears of men who believe that murder is a form of mercy.